The great NFL player Nate Solder is our guest on Personally Speaking today. Please stay with us. Hello and welcome to Personally Speaking. I'm your host, Msgr Jim Lisante. And NFL player Nate Solder joins me now. Nate played football for the University of Colorado and went on to play offensive tackle for the New England Patriots, winning 2 Super Bowls as a member of the team. Nate signed a 4-year contract as an offensive lineman with the New York Giants in 2018. In 2020, he announced he would not be playing in the 2020 NFL season, citing health concerns surrounding his family. Nate is currently a free agent. He's married since 2014 to Lexi Allen, and together they have 3 children, Hudson, Charlie Grace, and Emerson. Nate's here with us today to talk about his life, his career, his family, and why he puts his faith and his family above everything, including football. Joining me now, I'm so pleased to welcome to Personally Speaking NFL champion Nate Solder. Nate Solder is our guest. Nate, thank you for coming on our show. And Nate, let me go back. Now that you are not only married, but a dad a couple of times, I'm looking back to the family of origin a little bit. Your parents, when you look back at the way they raised you and your brother, what did they do right?
I'm lucky to have great parents. They were hardworking, first off, and they poured into us as much as they poured into anything else that they did in their lives.
Wow.
So they started a couple businesses, and me and my brother grew up in that environment of them running and starting those businesses, and they were committed to that, but they were much more committed to me and my brother. And the time they spent with us, I can remember my dad taking us skiing every single weekend for years. I mean, years. So he committed an enormous amount of time that now, having my own kids, I just appreciate how much time and quality time and effort they put into intentionality that they put into raising us.
Yeah, so they gave you time, energy, love, and devotion. And how about the faith story? I know you and your wife were both deeply into your Christian faith, which I love, but I'm wondering, was that something given to you from the outset, or is that something you came to in your adult years?
Well, my parents are awesome in the fact that they've really fostered healthy soil. So we talked about spiritual matters. We would visit different types of denominations, different churches, different types of religions. So I knew a lot about about a lot of different things.
Right.
But it wasn't until I got into college and professional football that I really dove into my Christian faith.
Okay, so it was later on that you said, I'll embrace it. Kind of like, it's reminding me, Mark Bavaro, who I was arrested with years ago at an abortion clinic where we were protesting, and he said he went to Notre Dame, and he'd been raised Catholic, but it wasn't until he was with his evangelical teammates at Notre Dame that he realized how deeply they were into their faith, and he said, I better look again at mine, and he got to know his. Speaking of Mark, and I wanted to mention this too, Mark won for himself once an editorial in the Sports Illustrated when he would catch a touchdown and genuflect to give praise to God. And the editorial said, Mr. Bavaro, keep your religion to yourself and just play football. Now, as somebody who's not too shy about the fact that he believes in God and he's a Christian, how do you deal with it when people want you to kind of separate out the faith from your life?
Well, that's something I've learned, and it's not been easy because in a large scale media production, a lot of times your words are twisted, and a lot of times they can pick out things that they want, and they can manipulate the message that they want. And so being at multiple Super Bowls, you're inundated with all this media, and you want to talk about your faith, but they just strip that away. And so we have found some great outlets that allow for that faith to be kept in there. And I think that's so critical because honestly, I don't think there is a separation. I think that our faith and our day-to-day lives are one and the same. Spiritual, physical, emotional, it's all interconnected.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that. Now, every weekend I get the privilege of being a pastor who gets to witness weddings, and to end up not giving a homily, a sermon that's some canned thing, formula. I always ask the couples, write me an essay like, why of all the people in the world you could possibly end up, why do you know that this is the one? And I'm just wondering, when it comes to you and Lexi, If you had to define why, of all the great women out there in the world, this is the one that you knew I'm supposed to build my life with, what did she have? What does she have that makes you say this is the one?
Well, I think when I asked her to marry me, maybe in my naivety, I said, I couldn't live without you, is what I
Wow.
felt like. There's a lot of people I would like to be with, but I would have really felt like I missed out if I didn't have her in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And now, 8 years into our marriage, three children, our oldest son going through cancer, all the things we've been through with that, moving to different cities, we complement each other so well.
Uh,
She's incredibly stable, emotionally stable, a very relaxed personality. She's a community builder. She's not much on time schedule. And I'm the total opposite. I'm like disciplined, and it's to the T and to the minute, and I'm always pushing harder and harder and harder. And so we just complement each other. And I think in that we've seen the gospel so clearly,
mm.
where we can both know each other so well, know our flaws, our strengths, our weaknesses, and still love each other. And that's just pointed us to God in so many ways. And to root out that selfishness and say maybe my way's not always the right way, and keeps working at our hearts in a lot of beautiful ways.
Nate, do you have any idea? I know they're young, but is there a particular right way? I know parents and grandparents watching a program like this wonder themselves, like, I love my faith, I love Jesus, I want to share it with these kids I love, but how best to teach the faith that we love to the children that we treasure?
Yeah. You have to ask me that again in 40 years. We get all these experts on raising kids, and it's just been difficult. We are not perfecting the process at all, but one of the things that I focus on is my relationship with God first. And I
Hmm.
think if my relationship is strong and I'm spending time in the Word and I'm really committed to prayer, that they're going to both see that, and that's going to filtrate into their lives as well. So rather than teaching them all these core principles, which we will, we'll do the catechesis and we'll do all these sort of things, but
Hmm.
it's going to be how they see us living out our faith is going to be most critical.
Now, in the people that come to my parish, and I guess every church, a lot of the praying has to do with basically, Lord, this is my situation, I need your help. And the concept of fully giving ourselves over to the passage in the Lord's Prayer of, thy kingdom come, thy will be done is not easy. I mentioned that this beautiful first child of yours, when you get a diagnosis that he has cancer, I know you have a great deal of faith, but it would be a perfectly normal thing to shake your fist in God's face and say, I know you didn't make this happen, but you're God. You can make things better. Why in the world would you burden my little child with this? Was there any anger in your response to finding out that your son was sick?
Um, I've been angry at God, but I was not angry at God for that.
Okay.
Uh, um, I think what it is being a professional athlete, I've become so good at overcoming challenges
Hmm.
because I'll work harder, I'll put more time into it, I'll think about it harder, I'll train better, I'll find better supplements. So I was always kind of in control of that. And this was the first thing that I was not in control of. And it wasn't based on our decisions, it wasn't based on something that we could do. And God so humbled us, and He said, really, you were never in control of anything. It was me there the whole time
Yeah.
doing it. And so when people say, oh, well, there's a silver lining, and I said, well, quite honestly, I think that's crap. I think that there are things in life
Yeah.
that are just bad, and there's things in life that are just hard, and you can't always give a silver lining to some things. And
Yeah.
so disease and children getting sick and dying, that's just a bad thing. And it's a realization that there's sin in this world and there's a need for a savior. And who but God would send his one and only son? It was my one and only son that was
Mm.
in jeopardy of dying, and he did the same thing for me. What kind of love is that? It was a kind of depth of love that I never realized until my son was in that position.
Nate, we've talked a lot in my church about what's going on in Ukraine, try to be mindful of helping the folks there. But I think until the Ukraine situation, I had never fully admitted to the reality of the absolute presence of evil in the world. And I can't look at what Mr. Putin's doing and not say this is just absolute evil sin. Are you ever overwhelmed or hopeless by the fact that while there's so much good in the world, there's a good bit of evil there too?
Yeah, there is. I don't think overwhelms the right word,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I am shocked by it. It hurts me deeply. And one of the most powerful sentences in all of literature is Jesus wept. right?
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
means that he's feeling our pain, that this pain is real, and it's even God feels sorrow when people in Ukraine are suffering, and that's just one of the millions of things that's going on. And so
Yeah.
as Christians, I think our heart can't be anything but broken for those hard circumstances.
Yeah.
But that's not where the story ends. 3 days later, he came out of the tomb.
That's
There's
right.
redemption. And not only that, he's coming back. He's coming back to restore all these things. So we have that hope to look forward to.
The the fact that you guys had to fight illness through your first child, I wondered. I've heard this so often from, again, people who raise children for a living. But when you're a dad of other children as well, but you have a child who's got special challenges and needs, how do you and your wife figure out, how do we make sure that in the process of loving our firstborn who's fighting illness, we don't forget to equally share love with the others?
Yeah. Yeah, that showed up in a lot of funny ways. One of the ways was we had to give Hudson constant different types of medications.
Mm-hmm.
And so our daughter, Charlie, we had 3 kids. Our son, Emerson, our third, was not born yet, but Charlie was around for all of it. And she was a great support. And we intentionally included her in going to every one of his appointments. And as much as we could, she was involved as a team. But we noticed that as we were giving these medications, that she felt like excluded. Like, I don't get these medications. I don't get this special time. But for us, it's like, I don't want to give these medications. I don't have this battle every night of taking these different medicines. But she felt like that attention was something she didn't have.
Yeah.
So we started giving different things she could chew on, gummies and all that stuff to kind of include her in it, which is just a funny thing. But you could tell that was a small example of how she just was excluded of all that stuff.
Right, right.
And so I still don't know what the ramifications are with that, but obviously you love all your children so deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're focused, so much of your attention goes on one child. It was a concerted effort to take her on dates, just her, and spend a lot of extra time with her. And we always tried to parent Hudson as we would, hey, I don't care if you're on chemo. Like, that's not proper behavior. We're not going to act like that.
Wow.
And one of the challenges for us was how many gifts people send. And it's so generous and so kind, but it's a challenge because he thinks this is just expected. And where's the next gift? He's ripping through it, doesn't appreciate it, doesn't have any thankfulness for it. And so we started blocking this off, like, guys, we appreciate all the love. Can you send it in other ways?
Yeah.
So there's been a number of challenges, but spreading the love is definitely hard, and the more kids, probably even harder.
Yeah. Nate Solders, I guess. Nate, we talk about Hudson and his challenges, but for our listeners and viewers who may not know, Nate himself had to deal with the issue of cancer. When you got that diagnosis, obviously the first response is a bit of horror, but what did you do with it?
Yeah, if I put myself back there, I was so surprised because I think that same instinct in me to be able to control my health. I would lift weights and I would get stronger. I would eat supplements and I would stay healthy, and I could kind of control it. And that was the first time as a healthy young person, when I got testicular cancer, I realized that my life is temporary, and I only have so much life, and I'm not going to be here forever, and it could just be taken away in a quick moment.
Yeah.
And that made me reflect on where my priorities were. It made me reflect on where I'm spending my time and why am I wasting time doing things that are not for eternal significance. So it's really influenced me in a lot of ways.
The actor Eric Bergen was our guest a few weeks ago, an on-Broadway guy, and he also testicular cancer. But I asked him what I would ask you is that I'm told that some men, when they get that, like, go totally silent, that somehow or another it's a threat to our male ego, and both you and Eric kind of said, no, I'm putting it out there. And did you have a hard time doing that, or was that not so hard to do at all?
No, it wasn't hard to do, but I do understand, because you're a young man, and that's kind of like something that's very part of your identity, that your virility and all those sort of things, and to talk about that is uncomfortable. But just on the humorous side, the number of people that came to me and started telling me about their issues went through the roof. So I could tell you all these things about different people's stuff, and I'm like, okay, I didn't want to know all this information.
Right. Too much information.
But I felt like I guess I felt a strong urge to share because I thought that it could help somebody. And I don't ever feel uncomfortable about it. It doesn't make me feel shy or anything because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't choose it, and we all have
Right.
something to deal with. You know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, for those who don't know, Nate, when he was playing for the Giants, and anyone listening is hearing about this great contract and how well paid he is, but in 2020, he decides to step away from football and focus on family very, very much. I mention that because you said at one point in an interview, Nate, that I and my family, my wife and I, we have discerned the will of the Holy Spirit. And I think for a lot of my own parishioners, they have no clue yet what is the process of discernment. So, can you share with us what should any Christian do in trying to make a monumental decision like that?
Yeah. Well, that particular decision had the input of a lot of people, and
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I thought about, and it was given to me by a friend. He said, "Well, take in information and then pray about it, and take in information and pray about it."
Right.
So we don't have all the information, but with all the information we have, God asks us to use our intelligence that He's given us to make the most educated decision that we can. But then we send it to Him in prayer and say, "God, this is what I think you want me to do." And one of the things I realized too was that if I'm dying to myself,
Mm.
reflecting Christ in my actions, that it's not about me anymore, it's about serving others, which are more important than myself, how could that not do anything but honor God?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to push on and say, well, this is about my career and it's going to devastate my career to take a year off. And then I sat back, I said, but in 30 years or say eternity, is it really going to matter? What's going to matter the most? The time that
Right.
I spend with my family and the faith that I show to them in the next step that I take. And so far, I'll say this, the shock that it's taken on losing a massive contract and not having the performance that I once had, all those sort of things, I would have traded it again in a second because it was worth it to
Wow.
be there for my family.
And Nate, what was the response of the folks who hired you, the Giants management? Did they understand what you were saying?
Tremendous. They were tremendous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was Joe Judge, who was the head coach at the time, and John Mara. They both called me right away and said, "Hey, we fully respect and appreciate you making a great decision like this." And even John Mara, he was in on the negotiations for having that opt-out clause. And he said, "I thought about you when we put that clause in there." So um, I have nothing but admiration and respect for all the people at the Giants organization.
I had the privilege of being a friend of Wellington Mara, and I think knowing your circumstance, he'd be the first person to say, bravo, bravo, Nate. He would know that that's got to be the important thing. Nothing else matters as much as family and faith. And yet, it brings us back to the issue of, Nate, they were paying you a lot of money, and I got to ask you, when you come from normal origins, as you do, how do you put huge amounts of money in perspective so that it doesn't consume you? The gospel last weekend was the man building bigger barns thinking he's going to live forever. Like, he missed the point that, we're here to do good and stuff. But when you're so richly blessed and so richly paid, how do you put money in perspective and not let it consume you?
Yeah, yeah. I think that at times it has consumed me, but God has continued to protect me, and one of the ways He's done that is put people in my life to show me the way. And
Mm.
one of the people is his name is Jimmy Mayato. He's the CEO of Compassion International, and he has been so instrumental in teaching me what it means to be both leader and to be self-sacrificing for all your wealth, because we have enough and there's a circle of enough, and then there's a circle outside of that that's more than enough. And if you have more than enough, that was never intended for you anyhow. And
Yeah.
so everything that we have that's more than enough, and that line of enough can kind of be a little bit tricky, but when you go see when people have just enough, I mean, they're surviving, it
Yeah.
shifts your whole perspective of, do I really need this? Well, some of it's to enjoy, and we have many blessings that we get to enjoy. I mean, we have a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
home, and we get to
Mm-hmm.
spend a lot of time with our family, which is blessings that not everyone has.
Yeah.
But for all that more than enough, there's so many people that need our help that we would uh, uh, just get the gift and opportunity to share it with them.
So many charities come to folks like you, and you've chosen Compassion International. For our listeners and watchers who are always looking for ideas on a great organization doing wonderful work, how did you come to pick Compassion International?
Well, it was through a professional athletes ministry called the PAO.
Mm-hmm.
They had kind of suggested it to us, and they'd given us an opportunity to meet them and talk to them. And so we sat down with them one day and we said, we want to be involved. We don't know what that means. We want to be involved. They say, okay, we'll give you a list of projects that are coming up and things that we can do. I said, okay, well, let's just jump in. And my wife and I have this policy. Well, we decide. I say a number, she says a number, and then we do something more than that. That's the way we give. So I'll say this, you say that, we'll do something more than that. And so that way we did with compassion. And we didn't know a lot about the ministry. And they're asking us to do interviews and all these sort of things. And we say, well, we don't really know what you guys do, but we're involved. And it wasn't until the next year we did a trip, and we're all just broken and we were thinking about maybe buying a second home. And we got there, and there were people that were building a school building. I said, babe, the kingdom of God is so much bigger than we thought it was going to be. We thought we were controlling it, but when we just released it to him, he built a home for these children to learn. Yeah. And what a blessing that was. And to see the accountability and the way that the organization over 40 years has been able to just refine their process and be really good at bringing people out of poverty. Mm-hmm. It's an alignment we're really thankful for. And I honestly think God just put them in our lives to save us from our own materialism and to give us an opportunity to give back to others.
Drew Brees. So Drew Brees is on the show, and I asked him the question, and a similar one to what I want to ask you. I said, popular, rich, great player. You're on the road a lot. Are you ever tempted to, in any way, be unfaithful? I guess it goes to the question of keeping ego in check and not necessarily believing you're great press. But when you face temptation, Nate, and all of us do one way or another, how do you walk away from the temptation toward the good?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing is you have to know your scouting report. And what I mean by that is you have to know the things that are going to tempt you. I am not one of my biggest temptations is not lust. One of my biggest temptations is man pleasing, actually. And so I'm constantly tempted. If we're at a bar scenario, I don't necessarily just want to find a girl and meet up with her. What I want to do is impress my friends that I can find a girl and meet up with her. So I am aware. I say, guys, when I'm out with my friends, we can be together as friends, but we're not going to a bar. I just know my own weaknesses with that. And my wife's aware of those weaknesses. So she says, Nate, what is it you guys are doing tonight? Oh, don't worry, babe. We're going to go to a movie. Okay, well, she can feel comfortable with that because she knows my scouting report as well. And that's through trial and error, honestly. God has protected us from any major issues, but we have had issues that have shown me my weakness, for sure.
Okay, good for you and being able to name them and to confront them. When we had Derek Cheetah, I had asked him this question, why, Derek? Why you? In the same way, when you look at the gifts, talents, abilities you have in the game and the blessings you receive, but why would God say, I think I'm going to give these to Nate Solder? Did he know how you were going to use them for the good? Or do you ever ask yourself, like, why, God? How come me?
No, I haven't asked that question. I'd have to think about that. But I know this. I don't think I deserve it. I don't think there was any merit that I earned or something I did to deserve it. I think rather it was God's grace from the beginning to the end. Okay. He found me in that non-religious home. He found me searching for my own glory. He found me, and he brought me out of it for a purpose that was far bigger than what I could have ever hoped or dreamed.
Oh, that's beautiful, Nate. You would appreciate Jeter's response was, when I asked him, have you ever wondered why or asked God why? And he said, no, and I'm not going to because I don't want him to change his mind. Now, in any sport, especially one where you get beat up the way you guys do, I got to ask yourself, aging. You're a young man, but in football, maybe not that long a career ahead, depending on how many injuries you sustain. Does aging itself bother, frighten, trouble, or challenge you?
The answer is yes. Mm-hmm. The answer is yes. My hair started thinning recently. And as you can see, it's not quite as thick as it used to be when I was younger. And it's a superficial thing. And I didn't think it was going to bother me, but it bothers me. And I guess it points to the flaw in my own character where I wouldn't trust that God has a plan for my life, that it's not dependent on my age, that he is creating wisdom in me, that he's maturing me for something greater than just superficial glory, because I used to be stronger and I used to have a full head of hair, but God says those things may not have been the important things. And so refocus back on me and remember that all that stuff is fleeting, but he's eternal, right?
Yeah. Nate Solder, I promise this will be my last question, but last weekend, St. Paul to the Colossians, one of the things he instructs us to do, I love his bluntness, is stop lying. And I mention that because anyone listening to an interview like this realizes that you're not a very good liar. And that you you kind of like call it like it is, down to sharing with us, I don't like that my body may not be able to do what it used to do, or my hair isn't as strong as it once was. I have to believe that was a conscious decision. Are you ever inclined even to stretch the truth, or does telling the truth just come absolutely naturally to you?
No, it does not. It does not come naturally. I think that's one of my flaws because I want you to like me. I want the fans to like me, and I'm almost empowered. Like that almost has power over me. So I say, God, you're the one that loves me. You're the one that. So whatever I say, I know that it's true, and I know that it's what my reality is as I understand it. And some people may not like me for it, but God will love me. And that has been a struggle for me because I want people to like me.
Yeah. Nate Solder has been our guest. Nate, I've been for 30 or more years doing this kind of programming, and especially in the world of politics, I'll find people saying, well, this is what I believe, but, that's just for me. Anyone can believe whatever they want. It's an unusual thing to find someone who says, this is who I am, this is what I believe, I'd like to share it with you. My faith sustains me, it's at the core of my being. You are unapologetically a disciple of Christ, and it's so encouraging to a guy like me. It's refreshing. And when you asked a moment ago, I want my fans to like me, everybody who I mentioned you were going to be on the program had the same response. Love that guy. And I have to believe part of why they love that guy is because of you being a straight shooting guy who just says, this is who I am, this is what I believe, this is the God I love. And I hope you never change. Thank you so much for being with us on Personally Speaking, and I'm praying for you, your family, your beautiful wife, and that you and I both develop Miracle Grow and can get our hair back, Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Yeah,
no, you're the best.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us on our program. If you want to reach me for any reason, I'm at personallyspeakingpodcast@gmail.com. You can also get past episodes of Personally Speaking, or even current ones, by going to YouTube and searching under Personally Speaking with Msgr Jim Lisante. Please, if you would, hit like and subscribe. I'd also like to remind you that Personally Speaking is on Facebook at Personally Speaking with Msgr Jim Lisante. We're also now on Instagram at Personally Speaking Podcast. Please share and let others know about Personally Speaking. I'm privileged to serve as host and executive producer of Personally Speaking. Our producer is Lisa Jandovitz. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll see you next time, again, on Personally Speaking.